a little bit of a trivia. You probably know that Israel is going to probably be in 2 weeks 100% vaccinated. So it's going to be the first complete experiment of how this vaccine is going to fare. So we're going to have a clear example. Of
That's great.
course, we had the example again when they reopened the school. It was a disaster, and I remember that I also posted it on Facebook, and some people commented on that. And of course, the reaction is, well, in America, nobody's going to listen to it. But maybe this time they will listen to it.
Well, I mean, certainly one thing I read about Israel is a lot of people have gotten their first vaccination, but will they have enough to get their second? But hopefully they'll ship them some more supply.
Yeah. I read today that they have a contract with Pfizer, so they should be almost 100%. Well, that's 100% vaccinated. Anybody above 15 is going to be vaccinated. So it's going to be a good example. If there are going to be side effects, we're going to know about it. The people who have asked, how long does the vaccine last? We're probably going to know about that earlier than other places. That was my introduction.
That's great. Well, speaking of, a lot, the number one topic I think people have is side effects and possibly allergic reactions. And, being an allergist, that this is the area of our specialty, and our national societies have been great about giving us daily emails with information and reports and trying to separate the wheat from the chaff. And the great news is it came out, I think, on the first day that it was approved in United Kingdom. 2 nurses got it and had allergic reactions. And then because of that, the CDC and other world organizations said, if you have a history of allergies, use caution when getting the vaccine, which was a very vague statement. I think, half of us have allergies of one sort or another. So what does that even really mean? And the first wave of shots that came out in the US, they did a data review of the first week in, I think it was mid-December, and they gave out 1.9 million vaccines that week, and there were confirmed 21 allergic reactions. So that made us feel good that the rate is about 1 in 100,000, which honestly is about the same as penicillin or, any medication that a person can take. There's a risk of an allergic reaction, albeit small. And the other great thing about that is none of the reactions were fatal, and all of the patients covered. So to me, that gives a very clear signal when people are weighing themselves the risks or the benefits of, should I get this vaccine? And with an allergic reaction being the potential more serious side effect or concern of people, that they're really, the risk was 1 in 1,000 and everybody recovered, whereas the risk of getting COVID is much worse, and unfortunately some people don't recover, and there are, can be fatal. So to me, that makes it a very clear fatal, non-fatal. But getting the vaccine will not harm you, or if it does, it will be a short-lived situation. So that's kind of my opening statement, and I think that addresses a couple of the questions that came in, and that's just from the allergy side of things.
Can I ask, Dave, can I ask, since you mentioned allergy side of things and how vague it had been, is there a better understanding now about what specific allergies are the ones that seem to trigger it?
That's something that I was going to address is a couple of things. First of all, I look at all the components of the vaccine, at least for Pfizer. There is some sorbitol, there is polyethylene glycol. The people have already talked about it, so it can be, if you're allergic to polyethylene glycol, is a polymer of glycerol, or glycerin, however you call it. So if you know that you're allergic to any cream that most cream contains glycerin, if you're allergic to that, then it's something that you may want to discuss with your with your doctor before you take an injection. But other than that, there is the RNA component, of course, and there is as part of the interferon response to any RNA that is overwhelmingly high. So the cell knows if there is too much RNA, like in the case of this of the vaccination, there is a system that binds RNA, especially if it contains some structure like double-stranded RNA. That could give you a little bit of inflammation, but I wouldn't call it, that's not going to give you an anaphylactic shock or any of that sort. So there are really very few components. Unlike a virus that is much more complex, there are very few components that you should be worried about. The other thing about, talking about, again, the ratio of concern, I think I sent you, Jana, a link. So the Sabin vaccine that has been a tremendous success for polio, that was dangerous. So there is a little regulatory region in the virus, in the viral RNA. They had a couple of point mutations, not even the coding information, not the part that makes the viral proteins. And there was a really high risk. There would be what is called a reversion. So the virus was attenuated, so it would only grow in the epithelium of the gut. And there is a form of the virus that grows on the nerve cells. And that's the one that has the problem. It can kill you or it can leave you paralyzed. So the danger was many, many, many times higher that there would be a reversion. And yet people got vaccinated. We all got the vaccine when we were kids, at least those of us who remember this.
That's polio again. We're talking about polio there, yeah.
Right. So that was much more risky. Here you have a little bit of a risk, 1 in 100,000, just they say, versus maybe 10% of the people that get really sick from this virus. I'm not not the 10% that die, but some 10% of the people that get really sick. That seems to be the percentage now.
Yeah, and speaking of risks, I will say from everybody I've talked to, there's a 100% risk you'll get a sore arm. Is that about right from everybody who's gotten the vaccine? It's kind of, that's an expected side effect for, and some people's is, it can range from mild to severe, everybody's body is different. But again, that's a short-lived thing that might last a day or two. For me, it lasted maybe 12, 18 hours. There's also a worry that the second dose may trigger more of these type of side effects, the sore arm, fever, malaise, fatigue. Again, in the people I've talked to that have had the second dose, it seems to be maybe 1 in 10 who kind of feel like they're knocked down for the day, and a couple people even had to miss work because they felt so lousy, maybe with a low-grade fever. They just kind of wanted to stay in bed. But again, that was short-lived. Even so, I had the second dose, and my arm was a little bit more sore than the first, but luckily I didn't get any of the constitutional symptoms like fever or chills or fatigue. So I was able to go to work without any issue. But for those that did get it more severely, it only lasted a day, and they were able to come back the day after that. So that's just my, because I didn't have official rates from the articles, but just kind of my own survey. 100% of sore arm, and then maybe 10% more, more knock you down for the day, but quick recovery.
So we have a question on as it's happening. I see Helene has a question. You're going to have to unmute yourself for a second, Helene.
Okay. I wanted to ask about taking Advil or Tylenol before the second dose of the vaccine. I've heard a few people say that their doctors had said prophylactically that would be a good idea, and I wondered what you thought about that.
Ricky, do you have a thought on that?
It's not going to hurt, and it can only help, I think. That's the whole point of vaccination. If it doesn't have any effect, if you don't get a little bit of a sore arm and, and a reaction, then it's probably not having an effect. But
that's what I say. Yeah, that's how you know it's working, right? Exactly.
I don't see why, having, something that is going to prevent the fever from spiking. Why not?
Okay. I have a different take. I read years ago, and this I think applies to vaccines in general, but there's a chance these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil and ibuprofen and so on.
It's going to dampen it a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. That, what we're trying to do is stimulate the immune cascade, and we release cytokines and prostaglandins and prostacyclins and all these chemicals in our body, which have an effect on stimulating the immune system. And those medications can dampen that response. So as a general rule, I was taught not to take it prophylactically, but that we don't know. I mean, the major thing is you don't know when you take it how much you're dampening, if at all. It's more of a theoretical thing. So my advice would be, see if you can go without it. And then if you do get a fever and feel terrible, sure, go ahead and take it because it's a low risk thing. And you want to feel better. So I think I would wait till after, and then it'll only take 30 or 60 minutes to kind of kick in at that point.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, I think your immune cells, especially your memory cells that have developed from the first, these are called boosts. The first one is the first boost, and the second one is the second boost. I think you're going to make the antibodies and the memory cells are going to come up anyway, maybe a little bit more slowly, but they will come up. So
yeah,
I feel both ways you're gonna.
I feel both ways are fine, but just if you can go without it, then you won't risk at all dampening the response. So why take it prophylactically, and then you may not have a problem at all, and that's fine.
And obviously you're in communication with your doctor about which is the appropriate one for you, because some people already have underlying, especially in this first group, they have underlying situations like kidney problems or something like that, and there are certain painkillers they're supposed to avoid, and they need to be in communication with their doctor. And I don't know, for anybody who's taken it already, I got mine on Friday, and I didn't take a painkiller, but they said use it, move it around a little bit, and mine lasted less than 12 hours, the pain, when I moved it. It wasn't fun to start moving it, but eventually it stopped hurting quickly.
And that must have been a sight for you to just be waving one arm,
This row over here.
I hope you weren't doing it in the car. I would have thought you were shaking your arm at me.
Yeah, that's what I was. And I had the foresight to tell them to put it in the same arm as where my cast was, so that I knew I wasn't going to be sleeping on that arm.
That's good. So as far as, we had a couple questions about the differences in the Moderna and the Pfizer.
Oh. Can I interrupt something? Sorry, Dave. I was thinking of one of the questions actually, though, more importantly, was is there a alternate route of injection for somebody who had lymphedema?
Oh yeah, I saw that too.
Like that. That's something you may answer.
So the clinical studies were only done in the arm, and they didn't choose anybody with lymphedema. But as an allergist who's unfortunately been responsible for giving patients hundreds of thousands of injections, I can say that vaccines work wherever you put them. So we used to have several breast cancer patients get allergy immunotherapy vaccines, and they went to the back room and got them in their thigh. They just pulled down their pants a little bit, and it took 30 more seconds than putting it in the arm. Now, that might be an issue with the drive-through vaccine clinics that a lot of, that they're starting one at the fairgrounds. You may want to call ahead or try to make a special arrangement in a more appropriate medical facility to get one in your thigh or in an alternate location.
Wear a long skirt.
Yeah, right. I was, how do you get the thigh up to the window? That would be interesting. But yeah, I would highly recommend just getting it in an alternate location. And then, I mean, the what I was told about the vaccines is that they're both mRNA vaccines. They both had 94 to 96% effectiveness. One of them, the Pfizer, has 30 micrograms of mRNA, and the Moderna has 100 micrograms, which is why we were hearing some talk about cutting the dose in half with the Moderna vaccines that I think they might be doing in Great Britain, but was kind of shot down in this country because it wasn't studied. You know, theoretically it might work because, hey, we're giving the Pfizer, that's 30, so we can give 50 Moderna. That should work, right? Well, you just don't know because it wasn't studied. And so I think that's a good call. I don't think we should mess with it. I think that the problems are with the distribution of the shots. I think that it seems like they're going to be able to make a boatload of shot to meet demand over the next few months. I think the problem is just getting it to the patients eventually. So I think if we can solve that, then we'll move this thing along. What do you think, Ricky, about having the dose of the Moderna vaccine?
I think it probably would work. I mean, 30 micron, 100 micron is still a lot. In terms of making a protein out of it, but yeah, I wouldn't mess with they have each arm was at least 30,000 people here, so let's not change something that worked. Even in Britain they're thinking about giving one shot, and then also here actually Biden was thinking of a few days ago of immunizing as many people as possible and wait for the second dose to become available. I think they should stick to the schedule.
I agree. When it was studied in one way, and if any of you have ever been in a medical trial, they're so rigid. Anything that happens that's off protocol, you have to file a protocol deviation, and it's a big thing, and the nurses call you, and then it's just, trust me, it's not fun, even from my side. So they're very careful about the rigidity and following the schedule and following the protocol. So I would hesitate to deviate from that because you risk losing that 94, 96% and having it go down.
Can I ask a question? Some people have already gotten one, but not their second, and we're a couple weeks away if we just got shots within the last week or two. You speak about that. We each have a callback date for the 3 or 4 weeks, depending on which shot you got. What if for some reason you can't make that specific date? Is there a day or two of deviation on that?
In the trial, they had one day on each side of deviation. Okay. So I think you should probably just notify the facility that gave you your injection just to make sure. But I think there's a risk in deviating too much. I think there's always a little bit of wiggle room in these trials that they build in, because what if, the second day is on a Sunday or something, or, everything's going to be closed. They account for that, but farther than 1 or 2 days maximally. And if you got the first dose, the card kind of says that means they have the second dose for you. That's the other thing. You can't switch brands. When you got it at the first place, that's the second. You're going to get that dose at the second place. They've already said that they have enough to dose you with that second one, and you should keep in touch with them.
And they're prepping the vaccine for that day. They have to pull it out of the deep freeze, and they have to prep that many shots and things like that. So you try to get it for when it is.
I immunize many animals, so I know that it's actually quite more flexible than this, for the boost. But the reality is it creates huge logistic problems. So
yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, so. They're gonna call you if you miss it, and it just stick to the
exactly. Don't create problems.
You had more questions in your list.
Yes.
Let me go.
And I want to thank everybody who sent questions ahead of time. That was very helpful.
So, is there a difference between how the body reacts to vaccines from the two different companies? I think really not, because they're the same active ingredient.
Same thing.
Exactly. Just you had two companies kind of develop them side by side. So then another question is one safer than the other, and it's same answer. No, they have been seeing similar rates of side effects. Not to say that, occasionally you see maybe a less common side effect. I saw somebody, one of my friends, allergist, posted a really lovely swollen grapefruit softball in somebody's arm in Greece. It can happen. I mean, you can get local, derm hypersensitivity, skin reactions. It's just uncomfortable. It shouldn't be a problem for that patient. Maybe they'll have to put some cortisone cream on or something just for comfort. But I don't think one versus the other. The general rule I've been hearing is if you're invited to get a vaccine, take it. Don't worry about which company it is. And I think they're going to keep going by age. Another question was, does an underlying medical condition bring you to the front? It's too difficult logistically to confirm everybody with kidney disease come on this day, and everybody with heart disease, and everybody who's obese come on another day. I unfortunately, those are the higher risk people, high blood pressure, overweight, any chronic medical condition. But they're going to go by age, because we can look at a driver's license and go, okay, you're that old, go for it. And it's just going to be up to the individual to, when their age group is called. And I think they're going to go down by 10 years. So it was 70, and hopefully in a few weeks we hear about 60 and above.
I was in an interesting conversation with the governor a few weeks ago, called a meeting with the rabbis of the state, which was pretty cool. And he explained to us that the reason why they're picking 70 for the first group was because, even though CDC was saying 75, was that they did a study of where was the breakdown of the people who were getting more severe cases and more deaths, and it wasn't 75 and above, it was 70 and above. So they felt that it was a good idea to use the 70 demarcation. I thought that was very helpful, because it was about Louisiana specific population
data. And right, the other states I think are doing 75 from what I hear.
Mm-hmm. So I appreciated that. And it's not clear. He also explained how difficult it was to decide how they were going to decide who gets it next. Like, are teachers more important than police officers, for example? Like, how do you decide? And I did not envy him that.
Correct. Every special interest group is lobbying, and so it's got to be very difficult and frustrating to have to say no, or just to, weigh them all side by side. But I think age is still the top risk over profession. I think that certainly healthcare, people who are taking care of the sick people, and then, beyond that, I think that the older teachers are at more risk than the younger teachers. So just still following the age is probably as good of a way as we can do. Any other live questions from what we've discussed so far?
Yes, I have one.
Go for it.
Okay, what if you already have the shot and then you end up getting COVID? Do you just keep on with your regular scheduled next shot?
That's a great question. So there is, of course, it takes 2 weeks for the vaccine to kind of take effect. So if you get COVID in that interim 3-week, 4-week period, what I would do, because I don't know, I haven't seen this published. So this is a Dave Kaufman answer, not I've read it somewhere.
That's a question. I already had my first shot.
You already stumped the band. Well done. Well done. I would still get it if you're not that sick. I would use how sick you are because think about your immune system. If you're sick, God's hospitalized or really laying in bed with high immune system's already up, it's already busy doing infection fighting. So you don't really want to give it another task to perform at that time. But if the person is not that sick or already recovered, then I think it would be fine to stick with the schedule.
Actually, Dave, I was thinking this is a question that we had. That was an important question. And we may actually disagree on this, which
Okay.
would be interesting. Some people ask if you were already sick with COVID-19 and you've been diagnosed that you actually had COVID-19 and you recovered, you need to be vaccinated again. And that was a really good question. And it's similar to this one. So first of all, I should say, if you were vaccinated and you got COVID, probably you're going to have a milder form of it.
True.
Because you already started, your immune system is going to, but this was the main question. So should you get vaccinated again? And the idea was that I read in the papers is sure, get the vaccine again, because, the answer was we don't know how long basically the immune system is going to remember that you have the infection. I kind of a little bit disagree with it. The truth is that we don't even know how long is it going to last. But the reality is there are memory cells, both T and plasma cells. So you're going to remember, your immune system is going to remember the virus. So even if you get the virus again, it should, kick in much faster. So I feel that if you really had the virus, you probably don't need the vaccine. But we may disagree with that, and I read in the paper, that they say get it anyway.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks for clarifying. I did want somebody who had gotten COVID to get the vaccine. I agree with you there. That's what the guidelines say. I should have clarified, if you're actively ill and in bed or God forbid in the hospital, then I think it would be a rare case to deviate from the protocol a little bit and just wait until you're recovered before you got the second dose of the vaccine.
Oh, yeah, that was it.
I'm sorry, I'm glad you clarified that, because I didn't want to say you shouldn't get it at all. You're right.
Well, thank you both very much, because I've had my first shot, but I've got a few more days before the second one. Thanks.
You're welcome. Good luck. Don't leave the house.
Yeah, especially because of the snow.
That's right.
I guess there might be a concern about whether they'd give you a shot or not, because if you've got symptoms, they may not let you into the place that's giving the shots. That would be a concern, and I think you need to call ahead about that. The recent research is showing specifically that there are people who do get for the first shot, they may come down with COVID within the first week or two, and that's because you probably were exposed to it probably before, and if not even after, because it's not going to give you complete immunity after the first shot.
Yeah, I think it would be a rare case that you get the first shot, and in that period of 3 weeks you actually get symptoms and you get tested. I can't really imagine that it's going to happen all that easily, but it could happen in theory.
Well, they talked about it where you were not symptomatic, and you went in, you got your shot, and you became symptomatic a couple days later because you were already exposed to it before the shot.
Okay.
That was what they said, that how did I get it right after the shot? And the answer is you probably were exposed to it beforehand.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the famous thing we hear every winter. Doctor, the flu shot gave me the flu. That's exactly what it is. It's that you actually were exposed several days before you got the flu shot. You just happened to get the symptoms a day or two later.
Did we have other? You've got.
There was a question that was interesting. Somebody said that they had the virus, and they were donating plasma for recovered people, basically for
yes.
And they were asking, should I get the vaccine, and does that interfere with donating plasma? And I think that if you get the vaccine, it's not going to decrease your titer. If anything, it's going to increase it again. So, but the question is, again, if you had the virus and you're still making antibodies, there really no reason to get the vaccine. So that was one question. So keep going, to donate plasma and don't worry about the vaccine. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I think the only question is that we have data, I think 4 to 6 months since they've been doing the clinical trials, saying that immunity is maintained up to this point. And of course, there's still everybody who was in the clinical trial, God bless them, they're going to keep donating blood every month or every so often, so that doctors can check and make sure they still have immunity and how long it lasts. And I think we know that the immunity lasts longer with the vaccine than if you just had COVID itself. I think that something about the construction of the vaccine may make it longer lasting than just having the disease. What is your take on that, Ricky, about why the vaccine would give you a longer protection?
Yeah, I think it is just the fact you instead of progressively building immunity during the course of the infection, you have this optimized vaccination protocol, and that's why essentially you make the optimal response to it. When you get the virus, your immune system haphazardly decide, it's sort of a trial and error of what kind of cells must respond to it and make the antibodies. So I think that's my feeling. The vaccination is optimized, but I think if you make the antibodies and you're donating plasma, you should be protected, from just as well. So I don't think that would be a difference. But
and probably they're checking. They can tell you if you're not making enough antibody anymore, right?
Yeah.
They're checking that supply, and then you can say, okay, let me go get the vaccine.
I'm sure they're
at that point
checking. If you're not making enough antibodies, you're in the regression phase, then they're going to stop asking you for plasma. So, but you should be protected. Just to make sure you should be protected anyway from a second infection. If you had the virus, with most virus that we know of, once you got it, it's going to take a long time for you to get it again. That I had chickenpox when I was a child, and then I had it surprisingly again in my 20s when I was in Israel. It was a little epidemic, and I got it again. So you can get it again, but it was very mild. After a few days, it was gone.
So what do you think of these people who say they've gotten it twice? Because you've heard these cases.
I think that so fast. I think they probably they were not healed completely. My feeling is that it was just there was a nest of the virus somewhere that was suppressed, and it came out again. I don't think they were completely healed.
I agree. You get these, there's these unfortunate people who you might have read about. They're called the long haulers, where they get prolonged symptoms, and we don't really fully understand why. Perhaps that's the case when the person says they got it twice. Maybe they had an up and a down and another up.
One of the things that research just came out with was that the vaccine helps to protect you against more of the variations, also some more mutations than just building up antibodies naturally. So that's another reason to do this. We had a question about if you're a nursing mother, any concerns that are different?
So of course, the stock answer is it wasn't studied in pregnant or breastfeeding mothers. But you just go back to other vaccines that we have as a guide, and it is safe, in general, for breastfeeding moms to get vaccines, because you're getting not a live infectious agent, and so in fact, you might even think that some of the antibodies might even go through the breast milk. It might even be somewhat protective to the baby. That's why breastfeeding is always touted as the better option to formula, because immune globulins and antibodies can actually travel through the breast milk to the child. So I personally would advise my own wife to, yes, get the vaccine. And furthermore, same with the pregnant question. There's a lot going on. We need to use caution. Ask your doctor. One of my colleagues in town, Caroline Caperton, is an allergist, immunologist, who happens to be pregnant and was very proud of posting her getting her vaccine while she was, I think she tried to get her arm and the pregnancy bump in the photo at the same time. And it's the same thing. We advise pregnant women to get the flu shot because influenza can be much worse. Something about pregnancy can actually interfere with the immune response and or make it, much more dangerous. There actually is a higher fatality rate during the swine flu of a few years back with pregnant women over the general population. So I personally would also, as my colleague went and got the vaccine, I would have my own wife get it. Not that she's pregnant again, but if she were, I would have her get it.
And we don't really know. Has not enough studies yet really about this virus in pregnant women. But certainly you all remember the Zika virus. That was the main problem was the fetus.
Yep.
So
in these cases, we feel like the virus is far worse than the potential, side effect of the vaccine. And we already discussed at the beginning that most side effects are mild, and even if an allergic reaction is undertaken, while pregnant, the medicines you give to treat an allergic reaction are safe in pregnancy, like epinephrine, Benadryl, or prednisone steroids. All of those are taken regularly in pregnancy. So.
Can I say, and I forgot to start with this, it was part of what made me want to do this. When I asked Ricky a few weeks ago, how do you feel about taking the vaccine? Because I was a little bit nervous. I don't know that I would buy the first model of a car when it first comes out. And I was a little bit nervous about taking the beginning of this vaccine when the illness seemed so terrible. And he said something that I loved. He said, we may not know everything about the virus, but we know a lot about vaccines. And so I feel confident about a lot of the answers about the vaccine itself, even if we may not know everything about the virus. And that's why I'm glad to see the mRNA option instead of live virus or even dead virus being injected, because we know a lot about this. Or we, meaning you guys, know a lot about this.
Let me go a second. There are some people that have chat thing. How do I, okay.
Sorry?
Are you looking at some of the advanced questions?
No, okay. No, I was just looking at some of the comments right now.
The chat. Thank you for the lovely comments.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Okay.
So my question is, are we probably going to have to take a vaccine shot every year for the coronavirus, or will it be combined with our flu shot, or how's that going to work? Or do you have a clue?
Okay, combined, it's very unlikely. They're completely different formulations. So don't expect it to get only one shot. You're going to have to get one for the cold and one for the
and we're probably going to have it annually.
I don't think we know.
We know, yeah.
They're still studying how long the immune response lasts. And I think I think they only started testing this vaccine in like June, with the initial wave of volunteers. So we don't know if it's going to last 6 months or 12 months or 5 years. Maybe it'll be like a tetanus shot where you get it every 10 years. We just don't know yet.
There's
thanks.
But there's also hope that you never have to get
viruses. The flu virus is against the NS protein. The flu changes essentially strain according to the NS protein every season. This coronavirus, we are injected against, let's say the key that the virus uses to enter cells. So for the moment, this virus has not changed the key, and let's hope it is not going to change it. So if it doesn't change the key, then that's the hope of everybody. Then we don't need to vaccinate maybe once, more than once every couple of years, maybe. If it changes,
kind of like polio, we only had to do whatever.
Right. If it changes the key, we're in trouble.
Cool. Yeah, if it changes, well. Thank you so much. Y'all have been wonderful.
Good questions.
You're welcome. Great question. We have one about the blood type. That why do those with A positive potentially have a harder time with COVID and the vaccine? I didn't know they had a harder time with the vaccine. I haven't
seen it either.
Come across that. I think that whatever blood type you are, I don't even know if they studied that, honestly. But there was something about the disease itself, and that O people may fare better and A people may fare worse. And of course, I'm A, so there you go. But I don't fully understand the reason. Do you, Ricky?
Well, so actually, after I saw the question, I went to look a little bit, glance over the. It was on the New England Journal of Medicine that they published the study. It was 1,600 people, so that had adverse reactions, and they compare it against everybody else, including the one that never got the virus, basically. So they found that the one that had the A-type blood had somewhat, they were a little more common in the population that had the severe case. That's all they know. They did never compare, of the one that had the O-type blood, there are, less, the less cases. They didn't really compare the A-type blood versus the O-type blood to see if between them they had a worse outcome out of the people that got sick. So I think it's a, they made a big fuss out of it because it was published in a hot journal that everybody would like to publish, like us. But but in reality, I don't see much of a reason why one blood would be different than the other. It doesn't really have anything to do with the immune system having one sugar versus another, which is the difference between the blood types.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't conceive. You're right. So I'm glad you made the point that it was an observation, but they didn't study people going forward who had the different blood types to see if it was to confirm that observation. You're right. So it was more of a fuss, perhaps, than a real.
Right. They should have compared. Out of the old people that had, they didn't do out of the old people that had, a bad outcome versus the 8 people that had a bad outcome. They just saw that there was more A-type people in the overall that had bad outcome, but they didn't, they didn't study, out of these, the O-type is much more prevalent. So, they didn't do the study to really come up with the conclusion that there was a difference.
Well, I know people with A-positive blood who got the vaccine and weren't happy about it, and they had the COVID and they weren't happy about it, and because they have A-positive and they had heard it, I don't know if it's a psychosomatic reaction or not, but I can tell you that of the people who I know who have had it and have had the vaccine, they're feeling yuckier than other people right now. So
interesting, because I'm A-positive and I have luckily had a good experience. I'm
going to tell them that, and then maybe it'll compel them not to feel terrible anymore.
Say, Dr. Dave, he didn't, and why are you feeling so bad? Somebody asked about any pre-existing conditions precluding somebody from getting the vaccine, and as far as specific to COVID, I can't think of any why you would not, or why the person should not get a vaccine. I think that the only possible reason is if somebody has had a, there's this Guillain-Barré syndrome, very rare paralyzing illness that can occur in 1 in 2 million vaccines in general, even with influenza. That may be a caution why, but still, COVID can kill you, but, Guillain-Barré, it can be fatal, but it's so rare. But if the person had it and recovered, I could see why they might be, hesitant to get it. But that's about all. I think every other, there's no, I'm not writing any notes to anybody that, Susie has so-and-so, so she shouldn't get the vaccine. That really just doesn't exist.
Yeah, the one that I was thinking of, if you are immune deficient, maybe that's a concern.
So with the mRNA, there's no I'm glad you asked, because I have immune deficient patients. There's actually no risk because the particle itself is not infectious.
Right.
So,
no, but the question is whether it's going to help, because if
correct. Well, we're still advising people to get it because of the possible T cell benefits. So even if people are lacking B cells and the ability to make antibodies, it may influence and regulate their T cells. And if they still get it, maybe it would be milder in those immune deficient patients. So we have been vaccinating patients with lousy immune systems. Let's see, we talked about side effects. We talked about how long they're effective. We hope a long time. We talked about the alternate injection site. Why is one person critical with COVID and the other not affected? Example, daughter contracted it and her husband and daughter, both exposed, stayed healthy. Any ideas about that, Ricky? Of, in the same family, somebody gets very sick and somebody not affected.
Well, yeah. So we heard of horror stories of husband and wife who both died of it. And yeah, I think the most common things is that somebody may die of it and the other person is going to be perfectly fine. I think that's going to be the more common situation. And the fact is, I don't think we have any idea of why. It's most cases is obviously this cytokine storm that kills you. Is eventually is a delayed. So the virus was already completely spread out. It's a delayed, extremely strong reaction to the virus that causes this storm of really chemicals that essentially cause a collapse of the multi-system organ collapse. And we don't really know why people essentially it's the timing between the virus and the immune response. Some people have the right timing, and that's maybe most. So the virus goes away, is defeated, and in some people the immune response is not correct.
I agree. We don't know why within the same family, one person can have an easy time with the virus itself, and another person can have a horrible time and potentially fatal outcome. I'm sure, but it is right. The cytokine storm is are there other viruses that have this cytokine storm off the top of your head that you know about? It seems to be unique.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that was the 1918 influenza virus. That was a cytokine storm.
Okay.
Yeah, so every virus has the potential. Every virus has the potential. Okay, viruses don't really want to kill people if they can. It's much more advantageous to them, assuming that they have a brain, which they don't. But it's much more advantageous to them to make you sick, spread the disease, and continue to make you sick for as long as they can spread the disease. So that's their strategy. I mean, herpes virus is the classic one. It's going to stay in you forever, and they don't really. They've not evolved well if they don't do that strategy. The problem is, potentially if you don't have any immune response, every virus eventually, or a good immune response, every virus can potentially cause a cytokine storm. I mean, there have been people with chickenpox that have died in the past. Again, it's the most common actually thing that is going to kill you eventually, unless the virus itself is just going to destroy your lungs. But very often, yeah.
That's a good point. Even measles and mumps killed people back before most people recovered, but there was the unlucky few people that died of those diseases too. So you're right. I guess, right. All the diseases that we have vaccines to, I guess, had the potential to cause cytokine storm in some cases.
I have a somewhat unrelated question, if I may. In the very beginning, when they first declared this a pandemic, it felt like the whole world, all of the researchers and doctors in the world were all working almost together on this, that it wasn't, the competition was a helpful competition when there was one, but they were communicating with each other. Are we still seeing that people are, and countries are cooperating for the research here, or what are you finding?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think, that was, after certainly after the Chinese released the first sequence of the virus, the first full sequence of the virus, people have started collaborating a lot until China was blacklisted, unfortunately, because bad publicity or being slow in alerting other countries of the dangers. But see, here in America, certainly, we continue to collaborate a lot. I mean, that's why it was so fast to be able to respond to this. It's the collaborations. I think my project, the grant that I have on COVID-19 was the discovery of what is called the interactome, which means all the cellular proteins that interact with the viral proteins, and that was published only 3 months after after all the proteins of the virus were identified. So only 3 months later, they knew all the cellular proteins that interact with all the viral proteins.
That's incredible. Incredible to have that so rapid and rapidly published.
And it couldn't be possible. Yeah, so in other fields there is competition. I think here we're really talking about a lot of collaboration. And again, you see it every day. So the new strains of the viruses, because there are many places, including Ochsner LSU, that not only check your titer of the virus if you're sick, but they also sequence very often they sequence the virus, and these sequences are posted, almost daily. And if there is something new that emerges, they see it right away.
That's a good point. That's so it's great that LSU does that, and that's how they discovered that newer variant in the United Kingdom, which has since been found over here.
The EBT lab also sequences a good number of the samples that they get.
That's fantastic. And the nice thing is that Pfizer just announced that their vaccine should cover that strain as well.
Right. That's what I was saying. That's the key. I know the key of the virus. Let's hope that the key is not going to change.
Right.
That's
exactly. The key is still intact despite the virus. The door changed a little bit, but the key is still good. I want to react to something in the chat box about.
Right.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Ricky.
The virus, put a lot of effort in developing this spike protein. So hopefully that's a lethal point of the virus. It's not going to change it that fast.
Right.
But let's hope so. We don't know.
Exactly. This is kind of up my alley, the allergic. So it's thought that the polyethylene glycol may be a component of the vaccine that could be responsible for some of these allergic reactions that have been reported. As I stated at the beginning, the 1 in 100,000 who are getting the more systemic anaphylactic reactions. When you look at the data of actual case reports of polyethylene glycol allergy causing systemic allergy, it's really rare. There are actually many types of polyethylene glycol with different molecular weights. And there's different like the ones that are in creams and topical agents are going to be different than the one that you drink before your colonoscopy to help you clean out your gut, and that's going to be different than the one that's in a vaccine. So even people who react to one, like if you have perhaps contact dermatitis on your skin to polyethylene glycol or propylene glycol, you should be fine with the vaccine because it's a different molecular weight. It's a different type of compound. It's actually on two hands. You can probably count less than 10 people that have reacted to the vaccine component, and it's actually been reported. I'm sure they're going to study, this was of course before the COVID, I'm sure they're going to study these 21 people to see if they can figure out what was the component in the vaccine that got them. But unless a person, has a strong history of reactions to polyethylene glycol in the past, I wouldn't worry about that component specifically.
Yeah. Also, it's a question of how much are you exposed to it. So yeah, I mean, if you are a mechanic that changes the antifreeze in your car every day, and you get it on your hand, every day, then I would worry a little bit about it. Just to let you know, so polyethylene glycol is the antifreeze that you put in your car, is the component that does not let the water freeze in your radiators. So if you are a mechanic and you're exposed to it every day, we have people here that are exposed to mice every day, and they get allergic reaction to mice. If you have an allergic reaction on your skin to polyethylene glycol, it's something that you may want to talk to your doctor
right
about.
But we didn't see any. The leader of our society now is one of the top experts in contact dermatitis. So contact derm, you're right, is more common in mechanics and people who handle it regularly. But she specifically said that the vaccine one is different than the one that we can touch. And she encouraged people, even with the skin reactions, to proceed with the vaccine. So that was nice. To hear her say that.
Probably true. I didn't say not to get it. I just say you may want to alert.
Sure. Yeah. That's something. If somebody was concerned about that, I can print out that statement from that doctor and email it to you.
Well, this has been an amazing, informative hour, and I had promised our doctors that we would keep this to an hour, and we have done that. Dr. Kaufman, Dr. Dave, would you let us know when you hear about whether or not everybody who is signing up for tomorrow at the fairgrounds, I'm presuming that may not happen tomorrow at the fairgrounds.
That's a good point.
Almost everything is closing down. So let us know when we hear what's going on. We'll send out another notification. But other than that, was the only other hot, cold topic that I could think of right now that we would need to know.
Hot and cold.
If we have many other questions, we can either forward questions to the doctors, or we can do another one. But I think that this is has been wonderful.
There is a question in the queue. It says, please repeat the ingredients in the vaccine some people may be allergic to. Right. Okay. So right. So that's what Dr. Dave was saying. So there is polyethylene glycol, which is essentially a polymer of glycerol, which is a very natural thing. We all make glycerol. It's part of our fatty acid, our triglycerides. And the other one is sorbitol that they've been questioning about. That's it's a non-metabolizable sugar, but again, so it's very
common in your sugarless chewing gum.
Right.
Right. So it's out there. It's easy, consumed by most everybody.
And then there is RNA, and and that one should really not cause an allergic reaction.
I definitely want, Ricky, I want you to tell me how to get the effect of what you're doing with your light coming on and off. Like,
okay. 1 second.
No, I just picture 2020 of them having the guy with the light so you can't see who the guy is, like you're the suspect in Watergate or Deep Throat.
So there's a lamp there.
When the light's in front of you, we can see you. When it's behind you, all we see is your profile.
We'll just call you Deep Throat.
the trickier the questions were, the darker your face. That's Anyway, guys, thank you. Now that we've resolved the light problem, now I guess it's time for us to say thank you and good night, everybody.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Appreciate
it. I enjoyed it.
So very much.
Everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and for your participation.
If you still have questions, send them to Jana, and she's going to refer them to us.
Happy to.
Ricky, we should go on tour.
That's right.
When this is all done.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.